Welcome back to GoldSeek TV. I'm here with the president and CEO of Outcrop Silver, Ian Harris. Thank you for coming back on and giving us an update.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
We'd like to get an overview of the Santa Ana project and what's coming up for 2024. But before we dive into that, you had some pretty interesting information about the silver market in your yearly updates. So I'd love to get some insights into what's happening fundamentally with the silver market, because there's quite an interesting dynamic taking place, and it doesn't seem to be reflecting in the silver price, which has a lot of silver investors and followers kind of wondering what's going on. So I think it's important to break down what's happening fundamentally in the silver market, and you had a really excellent overview. So if you could give us a high level overview of what is the silver market looking like in the coming year, and what can we look for as far as the supposed structural deficits taking place?
Yeah, sir. First, I just want to go over things broad brush. If you look across the metals market in general, right, whether it's gold or silver or copper or cobalt or nickel or whatever, you see this massive disconnect between pricing and the world demand, right? And it's playing out really interesting. I like looking at copper because you see it on the cover of The Economist, right? You see it on Time Magazine, it's the front cover. So it's not like some secret nobody knows. It's out there. Retail knows that we need more of these metals, right? And silver, obviously, a critical mineral in this energy transition, and everybody's moving towards it. And so the silver component is huge. And then we look around and you look at the prices and we're like, what is going on? And so I pointed out in the letter, perhaps an analogy, and that is uranium. And uranium, I guess, was a little different because you had an enormous stockpile, right? You had it in terms of restocking depleted weapons grade material, or here or there. It was bits and pieces all around. Reactors became more efficient, blah, 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 blah. But it was like 20 years in deficit. And then, the stuff hit the fan, right? And there was a supply crunch, right? There was a supply demand crunch. And what happened to the prices of uranium? Of course, they went through the roof, right? Now, uranium's a really special market, and it's a small market, right? I think the silver market is a little better understood. So my curiosity is, when is it going to hit, right? And so there's two ways of looking at it. One is it's going to hit, and I hope it's at the very end, because the pricing will go astronomical, right? I mean, it is going to be a crunch, and people need it, right? And the cool thing about silver is it's not very sensitive, the product to the price, right? A little bit of silver is used in solar panels. It's used in electronics. It's used in a million different things, but it obviously, people who are selling a solar panel or selling a specialized circuit board, they don't care what they have to do to get silver, but they want silver, right? Because it's the most efficient metal at transmitting energy, period, right? And if you're going to end up paying for it instead of something else, you're obviously paying for that benefit. And the other one is it doesn't corrode, right? And so those two factors, it means they've already made a decision to use silver, so they don't care what price it is. So the other way of looking at it is, people are going to go, wait a second, maybe more like the copper market, and it's going to hit beforehand, but it's going to hit because the numbers are hard to fathom, right? For the last 3 years, we have been in deficit, and not a little deficit. Like, people freak out when copper is in a 0.5%, a 1%, a 2% deficit. We've had a 12% deficit for the last 3 years. 12%, right? And overall, the estimate, because the final numbers for 2023 haven't come in, that's about 423 million ounces of silver, right? That is equivalent to 6 months of the entire world production of mines. Like,
So
it's insane. Like,
it is.
it's numbers that are really astronomical. So it can only go for so long, right? And eventually it's going to get really interesting because supply's not going up, right? We don't see any new silver mines. I know because I run one of the very, very few true silver projects out there. There's just not that many, and new supply is not coming online, and demand keeps going up. And the other thing I like to point out was the increase in industrial demand. And I couldn't pull out, which is due to the energy transition, but that's what it is. And now it's getting to the point where when it goes from 1% to 2%, you don't feel it. But when it starts going from 10 to 20%, and next year could be 40%, you're talking about these geometric growths, and you're in a part of a curve, and things might really start unraveling. So I expect things to get. And then the other one is that the price of silver versus the gold to gold ratio is way off. So it's already underpriced. So I think obviously there's a gigantic paper trade, but it can only go on for so long, right? Sooner or later, a true physical supply demand is going to become a significant issue.
Silver is quite the precious metal for industrial use as well for industry, important in our daily modern civilizations. But as you also mentioned there, the monetary aspect, and we haven't seen a really large investment in the silver markets from the retail side. We have a gold silver ratio, which is pretty historic. It's above 90 now. That's quite the extreme. So it really seems from the monetary side, it's expressing a very compelling value case versus gold. And like you're saying here, we have a huge structural supply deficit. So where is all this extra silver coming from right now to satisfy this demand? If the supply of silver from silver mines is stagnant, and it almost seems like we may have actually peaked, or it's not really able to grow from here, but the demand is just a record-setting level, and it keeps being forecasted to grow. So where do we get the extra supplies at the moment?
So, I mean, there's only so many primary silver projects. I don't see any getting really close to turning the key, right? But individually, they don't make they don't make a 12% dent, right? So the other component of it is, as a byproduct of large gold mines, right? That have a important silver credit, right? I remember I ran a mine actually in Saudi Arabia, and it was 90%. Ardora was 90% silver and 10% gold, but in value it was the opposite. So it's not a huge value for them, but there's still a significant amount of silver production. But I don't see any big gold mines coming into production either, right? It's staggering, right? Which means, and we have record high gold prices right now, and we still don't see mines being built. And that says a lot, right? That says a lot. That means prices have to go higher to incentivize the construction and advancement of projects. And then you also look in the cupboards and you say, okay, where are all the projects? And you look at how devastated juniors have been over the last 2 years, really. And you go, well, they're not advancing projects either. So it's really coming into a very interesting storm. It's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to have such an amazing asset in Outcrop. And the quality, because I know that they're as rare as hen's teeth, I think is one of the expressions, and they're going to be extremely valuable moving forward into the future.
So let's talk about Santa Ana. It's been a project that had a pretty major milestone in 2023 with its maiden resource. You have come into the company now to move it forward, lead it forward towards a silver mine is what the goal is here. So tell us more about kind of the highlights of 2023, and then what are the goals for the coming year?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, you know that I'm a mining engineer, so that is a perspective. And my perspective is that to prepare Santa Ana to become a future mine, right? If we have to do it ourselves, we'll do it ourselves, right? But obviously, the idea here is to make something so attractive that somebody wants to build it more than us. But they want it to be de-risked, right? They want you to, so you have to, I always say, you have to have a mine build mentality at all times, right? Otherwise, your value will eventually go to zero. You'll hit a wall, right? You have to understand that we're in this business to develop future mines. So the first is to take a step back and understand what makes Santa Ana special. First, almost 3/4 of the resource value is silver. And so it's a true primary silver project and an extremely high grade. And really, there are very few projects, and actually I only know of one other one, that is a true high grade primary silver project, period, right? They don't exist, right? I mean, so They're extremely rare. If you're looking at indications of economic viability, right? High grade, high recovery, and high payable. And high payable is one that most people don't hear about because in a gold project, you produce doré and you get paid 99% of it and you don't think about it again. But when silver is produced as a zinc concentrate or a lead concentrate, you don't get paid. Sometimes it's 75% of the value of the silver, right? So it's not a good payable. So saying that it's worth $25 an ounce, you're not getting paid $25. So we have the ability with such high grade, such great recoveries and producing a high grade precious metal that we can actually potentially produce doré directly from our concentrate. Either way, we have a very high grade precious metal concentrate. Both have a very high payable. So you don't lose that value as you go down the line, right? You maintain that value. And so that points towards the economic viability. So last year we put out our initial resource. And so I have really two goals this year. And we're actually in workshops right now with the team to really hone in on what we want to accomplish this year in all aspects, including our exploration. But a big one is to demonstrate that, okay, we're at almost 40 million ounces, but there's a pathway to get way higher than that. So it's not just about incremental step outs on the resource, but it's to add additional ore shoots into the ready to drill out category so we can demonstrate a clear pathway of how to dramatically increase the resource. And the other one is working on de-risking by demonstrating, again, this trifecta is so good, it de-links you to scale. So that we have the ability to put a very small pilot operation, a training, a capacity building project into production on a very small scale and demonstrate, we could do it. There's a pathway to production. It does exist and you can do it. But also, even on a small scale, it's still economic. So obviously, on a much larger scale, it's going to be more economic. And so those are the major goals. And I see them as major catalysts, right? Not only results through drilling, but also changing the perspective overall of the project. Because I believe in the past, Outcrop was all about these stunning high grade hits that just make the eyes, what? Do you see this? And we need to get beyond that to demonstrate it's more than that. There's way more to this project, and it's a true gem.
And as you mentioned, being a true gem, this is a high grade primary silver, high grade deposit. So you mentioned there's very few out there. You're in a period here where the silver markets aren't incentivizing the exploration work, but you're moving this asset ahead. So I would imagine that when the silver markets kick back on, you're going to be quite farther ahead than most of the peers who are just struggling to just pay the bills and keep the lights on. There's there's very little work or exploration going on right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to add that in two different ways. First is if people believe, and they should believe, that that silver prices will eventually go up, and it's not going to be a small up, right? There's going to be a really significant price increase in silver. We don't know when, but we know it's inevitable. Really, it is inevitable. And so you look at, okay, how can I leverage best? So what's better than one of the highest silver component projects that exist, right? So, that project says it's silver, but then you look at it and it's only 20% silver, and you're like, okay, well, it's not that sensitive to silver price, where we are extremely sensitive to silver price. And I would like to think, although we have to get into the detailed project development, that it would be very economic project, stable, robust project, even at these prices, right? So it only gets better if price increases. So you're leveraged highly to that. And then the second one is we've all lived through, 25 years in this industry and I've seen it, right? When you get into a cycle, right? In these cycles, there's all these late players, right? And they do okay, but when the cycle goes down, they disappear. They are gone, right? They disappear. They're too late to the party. Right. But those that have projects such as Santa Ana, the cycle pushes them all the way through. and you can see them. And those are the type of projects I want to be involved with. I want to be involved with, and my past has been being involved with projects that become future mines. And so we want to be at the front of that bubble when things start to turn. And the last thing I guess I didn't really mention, I mean, one of the things we're doing in this workshop, obviously we had to make a difficult choice in the changing of our contractor, but now we are now looking about remobilizing. Our plans are to continue to drill in 2024, because we can still continue to create value at the bit. And so I think we have a lot going for us in all those terms. We have drilling, we have a strategy, we have, I think, a market that's we're still doing well, even in a poor market, which means I think we're just extremely leveraged if things either through news, things we do ourselves, or because of market shift. There's multiple ways to create significant value for shareholders.
Fantastic. Well, as this silver market revives and the juniors start to get more respect in the market valuations, we've seen in the past, companies like Outcrop get a quick reaction and revive very quickly. So we're waiting for this next cycle to kick on, but it's great to see Outcrop progressing and able to create value and create a potential future silver mine here, which does succeed at a lower silver price. So I think that's a key standout for this asset and for the company. There are a lot of silver mines out there that do need low to mid 20s just to break even right now. So the incentive, as you said before, is not going into the ground to really do a lot of development work. So it's really setting itself up for this big supply issue like we talked about at the start here. There's not a lot of exploration work. There's not a lot of future mines coming into place. So when the market really is going to need that extra silver supply, I can't imagine what happens and the interest that takes place, even from other silver majors, which doesn't seem to be a lot. A lot of them have been transitioning more and more to gold. I've seen over the last decade. So
It's hard to find silver projects.
It's really hard to find silver projects, silver stocks.
Yeah,
and
that's true, right? And it's the writing's on the wall, so to
mhm,
speak, in many senses, right? So
yeah.
I'm very excited about the future.
Yes, and you also mentioned too about the uranium market, that the similarity. When I started investing in silver, buying my first silver ounces, it was $4 or $5 an ounce. The U.S. government still was selling off the end of their, it was like a billion ounce plus silver supply and feeding the market. And looking now forward by a couple of decades, what a totally different market. Just seeing the flip here where the supply side is very tight and demand just keeps growing and growing. And a very important feature that you mentioned at the start is the mandated green energy demand, the electrification. People understand the story with copper, but silver seems to be overlooked at this moment. And as a contrarian investor, I like to see that opportunity, but I'm sure it'll start to get recognized more. So we'll continue to follow the silver markets and the story here with the
I think there's a
Outcrop.
fundamental reason for that, and it's because silver is sprinkled in everything,
Mhm.
right? There's a little silver in all of it, right? You can go any sort of technology, anything associated with the energy transition, there's silver sprinkled within it. So it's hard to say, although some have made dramatic comments in terms of electric vehicles alone could take 40% of all silver, but it's in everything. And so it's hard to feel that. And it's not like in copper, you look at an electric motor and it's just copper, right? You look at a wire and it's copper, right? So it's hard really to feel it for an individual person. But you're going to start feeling it when there's none of it to supply, right? And that's the nice thing too, is that you have demand from a million different small groups, right? It's sprinkled everywhere,
Very
right? And
distributed.
so that also is one of the reasons why, if you look at a Tesla goes, I'm going to need some copper and I'm going to need some lithium. And they know it and they go out and hunt for it, right?
Mhm.
But you don't have any big, gigantic consumer going out and saying, where's the silver? Which really makes it more sneaky, right? Because again, when it hits, it's going to hit. And so that's why I think it's really, really, really wound up right now to play out very interestingly.
It's very interesting insight. Great points. It's a highly distributed market and quite global. Yeah, it's great. It's interesting to see. You see the demand numbers this morning from China. They had a record for the last few years in silver. And same goes in Turkey and other places. So you see the industrial and also the monetary demand into India has been starting to pick up again. So it's really interesting to see both components really able to create a significant impact on the silver market.
If you start to see a sustained increase in silver price, and then you have a whole generation of people that played with Bitcoin and played with money here and there, and now they're looking and they're getting more mature, and they dabble in gold, and then they look over at silver, and then all of a sudden we see an investment interest. So there's another way where this could get really interesting, right? So there's just so many dynamics, and they're all pointing in a very similar direction, right? It's only how long can they keep Pandora inside the box, right? In my opinion.
Well, we'll do an update in the coming months and see how the market develops and follow up with some more updates. Thank you for the overview on Santa Ana and the interesting, last year that's taken place, but what's coming up for the coming year to develop this and push us towards a future silver mine, a very unique high grade silver asset. Thank you
Thanks,
again for your
Peter.
time.
Always a pleasure.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.